Well, hey there, sweet peas. Welcome back to Friendless. I'm your host, James Avramenko, and this week I am joined on the show by martial arts merch peddler and queer icon, Jabree Robinson. We discuss the hidden treasure of Bellingham, why you don't know what you don't know, how giving grace can change the world, and so much more. It was an absolute pleasure chatting with Jabree. I have been glowing ever since we recorded this, and I'm so excited to share it. So let's dive right in. It's time to lay back, get comfy, set your volume at a reasonable level, and enjoy my interview with the one and only Jabree Robinson here on Friendless. So I have a really special guest on the show this week. Someone who I have only met in person a couple times, but every time has been just such a joy. And I cannot remember who reached out to who to get them on the show. But in any case, I've got Jabree Robinson on, and I'm so friggin' excited. How
Oh,
are
no.
you today?
I am so good. I have missed you. I missed
Oh,
you.
that's so sweet. Oh my
Yeah.
god, that's so
No.
kind of you to say.
Honestly,
Thank you.
one of my I'm gonna put you in the top 15 there, and that's like a hard to narrow down category of people who I've met on my own accord in
Yes.
Vancouver. I love it. I love it. So yeah.
Thank you. That's like genuinely such a and you roll with a really fun crowd. So like I know what a compliment that is, and I'm gonna take that to heart, you know?
Yeah, no, mean it. Mean it.
Right? I don't wanna just like immediately launch into like my sadness of like losing that, it's like right at the start of the interview being like, yeah, since my breakup, I like haven't been welcome in any of those rooms, but like let's maybe not start there, right?
Yeah. But it happens. We have to admit that kind of thing happens and it is
Yes.
shitty. Like,
Oh, it sucks.
no, yeah, been there.
And it's I mean, fuck it, we're on the topic. I'm not going to go into crazy details, but it's like the thing is that like I get it, you know what I mean? I totally understand.
Mhm.
It's just that it's like fuck, like because the queer community especially is small enough as it is
Yes.
that like to lose a circle of any size is like a form of like social isolation or ostracization, and
100%. Yeah.
it's hard,
That
right?
was like my biggest fear coming up here, right? It's like my partner's from here. So everybody I'm meeting is through my partner. What if something happens there? Are these people still going to be my friend?
Yep.
In my mind right now, am I petty? No, maybe. But I'm going to delete everybody and just never talk to anyone again if something happens, of course. But like, it's so isolating and it is like social death, honestly, because it is.
Yeah.
The queer community is small
Mhm.
and they are very like, it is a clique. It's a clique. We'll be
Mhm. Mhm.
honest. It gets clicky at
Yep.
times for sure, and it's hard to navigate it at first. But
Yeah.
you have to try if you want to fit in.
Well, that's just it. You do your thing, and like
Mhm,
I just, I've had to really just lean on like, yeah, because I did the thing where I just got rid of everybody. You know what I
mhm.
mean? Like it's you were one of the few people who didn't get cut, and because I always saw and I say this as with a compliment, even though it might inadvertently was that I was like I always saw you as like friend of friend, and so I was like, oh, this isn't something. There's not going to be a lot of crossover here,
Mhm, mhm,
but anyone who was like direct, I was like, sorry, like because it's just, there's so much room for like there's stories and there's
mhm.
judges and everybody's suddenly people are watching my story who haven't watched my story in 2 years,
Happens all
and
the time, right? People
right.
start popping up. They're like,
Hmm.
"What happened? What happened?" Yes, yes,
Exactly. So I was like, no, we're done here,
yeah.
but now that we've established our baseline of where we're going with our conversation, um, for listeners, I always like to start the interviews with a really blunt question. For anyone who may not know who you are, I'll put that question to you. Who the hell are you, Jabree?
Yeah, my name's Jabree. I work in the sales industry, selling mixed martial arts gear. So if you need nunchucks, you need swords, a karate gi, jujitsu gi, come see me at Mikado on 701 East Hastings. But yeah, I am a non-binary from Bellingham. I moved up here, got my PR in September. Long process.
Hey,
Yeah,
congratulations!
thank you, thank you. Long, expensive process.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm just out here doing it, making friends, making connections,
love
such as
it.
yourself. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. Bellingham is a place that I've never spent like extended time in.
Mhm.
But you go through it, right, when you're going to
Sure.
Seattle or whatever, and it always struck me as like it always had that energy where I was like, do we just stop here? Like, do we just not keep going? You
You
know,
do
like
though, because I get so hurt because every time I mention Bellingham, people are like, "Oh yeah, we know
a bus
Bellingham.
stop.
We
Yeah.
pass by." I'm like, stay a weekend, like have fun. Go downtown to like the tiny little clubs that are just like freaky and like just a mixture of like old and young. It's wild. Like I don't know how to explain the energy there, but it's welcoming, like to all
Yeah.
people. Like just come on in, pretty much. Yeah,
There's something so like magic about the, what I know in America they call it like the Pacific Northwest, right? And I don't know if we consider that it by being in Canada or not, but like, the whole just Washington State is such a fascinating place to me. Like my deep love of Twin Peaks obviously informs that,
course,
but
of
there's
course.
also like, obviously there's Seattle and there's all the sort of ethos behind that, but there's also like such a strange like I don't know tons about it. I just know that there's very conflicting cultures in the woods,
Yes.
So
My
there's this conflicting energy that builds.
oh, totally, totally. A lot of my family is actually from Eastern Washington.
Mm.
So if you go east and then south a little ways, you'll have Yakima, Washington, and that is like also another big mixed bag. You drive into Yakima and they call it the Palm Springs of Washington. It's interesting. I encourage anyone to look up Yakima, Washington if you haven't, to find out if it is the Palm Springs. Visit, find out for yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Go on a little adventure.
you might be a
What
little
a name.
disappointed. Yeah. But yeah, lots of conservative. A lot of my family conservative growing up, right? So
Mm.
that's an interesting thing to navigate, being like the first person who's non-binary and out in my family, and how that, how do we go from there with maybe conflicting views, maybe not. My
Mhm.
family's very accepting, and I appreciate that. Like
Beautiful.
more than anything, that's one of the biggest things I could ever ask for.
Mhm.
But yeah, very conflicting. I went to school in Linden. Linden, Washington is right outside of Bellingham. So
Okay.
Whatcom County. Bellingham is like the hub for like progressive thinking. Travel out of there anywhere, shut down. It's
Yeah.
done. It's done. So that's like very interesting to see the friends I have remaining from those days who
Yeah.
is more like progressive in their views, because people get stuck out there for a
Oh,
long
yeah.
time, and they don't leave, and yeah.
Well, and that's something I think about a lot is this idea that like, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Mhm.
And if you are raised in the culture of like this is where you are from and this is where you stay, like sometimes I think that these conversations lose sight of sort of the other person's perspective, in that it's
Mhm.
like, well, how could they ever have been exposed to these things? Like we kind of it's
Yeah.
really it's hard, and it's not something that I think like everybody should just like do easily and simply, but it's like
Mhm.
sometimes we lose sight of that sort of grace of like this person is doing the best they can to stay alive in
Yes.
their environment,
Mhm.
and yes, it's putting up, at times it's putting us in direct conflict, and then
Mhm.
at other times too, it's like you're fighting with a stranger on the internet, like you're not actually in
You draw the
conflict.
line. You have to draw the line somewhere, right?
Yeah,
But that was
yeah.
something that I actually reflected upon a lot last year, was that I honestly felt privileged to be open-minded, to be able to leave my environment and explore more. Like, I see
Yes,
my friends stuck in this town, and they have these, like, terrible views, I'll say it. Like, some of them have just disgusting views.
absolutely.
They have been ingrained with that their entire life. They have
Yep.
not been allowed to leave their community. So, how can we expect them to grow? Yeah, they have access to the internet, but if your daily basis is this is how we think, this is how you should think,
Yep.
what?
Well, and the internet itself is not what it was sold to us as, right? And so it's like it's not the free access to all, I used to always be like, yeah, we have access to all knowledge that's ever been created on our box, but it's like no we don't, because like you still have to know what to search for, how to search for it.
Mhm.
You have to know what platforms you're using and what their intentions are, right? Like,
Exactly.
these platforms are not our friends. They're not built with the intention of expanding our minds. They're built to compartmentalize us, and so I think it's one of those cases of sort of like resenting the person for the system that they just like kind of lucked into,
Mhm.
and I think when we lose sight of the humanity of the individual, that's when, for lack of a better word, it's like that's when, they win, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
um you said something earlier that really twigged my ear, and I really appreciated it. And it's the framing of you saying you were the first out person in your family. It's not that you were the first one,
Mhm.
it's just that you were the first one who was able to. And I think that that's another element I've been thinking a lot about is a lot of these conversations I see and participate in is, these questions of like, well, there's more, fill in the blank of whatever of the day, right? There's more
Mhm.
autistic people, there's more queer people, blah, 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 right? And it's like, no, I'm pretty sure they've always been here.
Yes.
It's just the conversation shifting, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I guess when I say like the first out, I guess I mean with, because I do, like I spend a lot more time with my mother's family than my father's family. My dad was kind of a messed up dude, so I distance myself from that for sure.
Sure.
I actually have a great uncle who transitioned when he was younger. No
Wow.
longer with us. Never got to meet him, but he was, yeah, he was the first trans family on the black side of my family. I would say, yeah, and he was
Wow.
very. They were very supportive, so I know, if I were to be open with that side of my family when I do see them, like I feel that support. But yeah,
Yeah.
that side is more secular, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's something, I think we're only as a queer community, I think we're only very recently discovering this past that there was a stopgap obviously between the 80s and the 2000s. There was something going on that was affecting our community pretty deeply,
Mhm.
and it really severed that lineage of history and knowing of ourselves, and we're only finally starting to tap back into it quite recently, and it's really illuminating. You know, oh, what was the book? Chandelier, former guest of the show,
Mhm.
community member here, who's just an incredible person. They narrated the audiobook version of a book called, I think it's called Please Burn This After Reading It, or Please Burn This Letter. I'll have to get the right title for it, but
Yeah, please.
it's letters of drag queens from like the 1950s, 40s, 50s,
Ooh.
and the only reason we have these letters is because one of them survived and kept them until he was long into his old age, and it's just a treasure trove of not only just these individuals but also the whole culture,
Mm.
and it's, what am I trying to say here? I guess it's an exciting time, but it's also like there's a bit of a melancholy for me because it's recognizing, like you say, that there were people from our pasts that are only now getting a chance to be spotlighted in some way.
Yes.
Um, and I wonder what are your feelings about things like posthumous recognition or like legacy or things like that?
You know, I think I think I was meant to be queer.
Yeah.
I think when I look back at it, and I've kind of started to look back more on like some of the queerness that I have seen in my family, that I'm like, are we not going to talk about it? Are we not going to talk about it?
Yes.
I feel like, yeah, I feel like I was put here to be queer for my family that was more, that couldn't do this kind of thing. And I
Yeah.
want to tell their stories, and I want to talk more about it, and I want to hear more from my family, the things that they saw with them. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah.
That's beautiful, and that's a beautiful. I think because my brain initially, when I hear terms like legacy or posthumous recognition of any kind, it's like I feel frustrated by it, right? Because it's like, well, they're dead. Like I don't really buy into any kind of afterlife. Like I've got some ideas that might be nice, but it's like I won't know until I'm dead, and either I'll find out or it'll be what I suspect, which is I'll just be dead, in which case I won't know, right? So it's like sometimes I feel really frustrated by like having the opportunity to celebrate people while
Mhm.
they're living,
Yeah.
and
We
not
don't
having
do
the
that enough. We do
exactly.
not do that enough.
And yeah, that's exactly right. And I was just writing actually about a poet. I'm gonna say her name wrong, Louise Gluck or Gluck, or I don't know, but it's got one of those like umlauts over the u. And she died late last year, and I'd never heard of her before. And turns out she had won like a Nobel Prize for her poetry and stuff. And like she's unfucking believable. I've been reading her stuff, and it's just like blowing my mind, and it makes me, again, it circles me back to this like sadness of like not celebrating the person. I mean, obviously I wasn't going to be celebrating in person with good old Louise, and she seems to have done well for herself.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
But it is that thing of, like I think sometimes I get kind of down on the idea of legacy, right? Because it's like it, it who gives a shit, like if my legacy only appears after I'm dead, then it's kind of worthless.
Yeah.
But then I guess the flip side, like you're saying, is you get to be sort of the torchbearer, right? And you get to kind of
Exactly.
carry the stories.
I live day to day knowing that I will leave a legacy behind me.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
I do really crazy shit.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Because I don't want to be boring, right? Like
Yeah.
we gotta be interesting. The other day, I chased down a man on the street. Um,
Okay, tell all of this.
I have to because I don't. I lost control one day. Work was stressful. Driving home, going the speed limit, mind you. I don't always, but I was this time. Guy walks out just in the middle of the road. I
Oh
had to
shit.
slam on my brakes to stop. I roll down the window. I give him a, hey, fuck you, guy. You
Yeah.
know, he runs up to me. He goes, "You're American. You're gonna shoot me." I was like, "No, I'm not. But you need to stop." Takes his fist, hits my mirror.
Oh.
I take a deep breath, but it's not enough. It does not do the
Yeah.
trick. I
The
have to get
door's
out of
open.
my car. I throw that bitch in park. I got out. He's like, "What are you gonna do?" I said, "What do you think I'm gonna do?" And it pursued from there. Some words were exchanged.
Yeah.
Not gonna repeat them on here. I go and park. I go and park my car. I'm gonna go maybe to the liquor store and buy some beer. But you know what? First, I have to find him. I gotta
Mm.
find him again. I gotta take a picture of him, so I can
Yeah.
post it somewhere.
Yeah.
I find him. I find every store he goes into. I call. I say, "Hey, there's a guy who just walked into your store and he's very violent. Please look out." The first store
Wow.
they threw him out of the store. And at this point, I'm just being petty. And so I yelled at him. And I'm like, "Hey, buddy, how's it going?" And then he starts running after me.
Oh
Runs
shit.
after me for a good 1 to 2 blocks. And then finally I stop and I turned around and he walks up on me and he's like, just starting to talk and he's going crazy. He's like, "You smell like soy sauce. You smell like soy sauce." I was like, "Oh, okay." I got involved in a situation maybe I probably shouldn't have.
Yep.
He finally leaves though, but it was very interesting.
Wow.
It was very
I,
interesting.
commend the bravery for engaging, because
People
I,
get away with this too often.
yeah.
People get away. A guy on the bus a few months ago, I was sitting on the bus and he gets on and he starts pushing me. And he
Mm.
tells me, "You're too fat to sit in the bus seat." I did
Just
not
to
let
your
him get
face.
away with it. I did not let him get away with it.
Fuck
I asked
no.
him, I said, "Do you think your parents are proud of you right now?" I have learned that that is something that will get to people.
Ooh,
You ask if
yeah.
your parents are proud, he said,
Yeah.
"I'm gonna end you. I'm gonna end you as soon as you get off the bus." And I said, "Okay, go for it."
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
Did he
nothing
follow
ever
you off the bus?
people no, he did not.
Yeah, of course
People
not.
get
Yeah.
nervous, right? Because
Yeah.
it's a lot of talk, but you have to know how to defend yourself. And
Yeah.
if you want to learn how to defend yourself, come down to Mikado at 701 East Hastings and I will help you out.
Yes, yes. Get some nunchucks up on there.
Yes,
You're right.
yes.
I there's a story I heard years ago that I always think about. That it started by saying, um, being a pacifist being a pacifist is different from being a coward, right?
Mhm.
Being a coward is, someone who cannot defend themselves, right?
Mhm.
And so you don't, right? Being a pacifist is still knowing how to defend yourself and knowing when there
Exactly.
are times, you don't go looking for it, but there are times when, yeah, things do get out of hand and violence is necessary, and you just do everything you can to avoid getting to that scenario, right? And that's what pacifism truly is, you know.
Not
And
enough people recognize that though, you know?
yeah,
Everyone thinks it's just like, no, it should never come to violence. But you know, sometimes there's no other option. You are not given any
yeah,
option. And yeah, I always encourage people to know how to defend themselves.
yeah,
I've had to defend myself before, and it's a terrifying position to be put
yes,
in.
yep,
But when you know that you have like the skills, technique, like jujitsu, whatever that
mhm,
may be,
mhm.
you know, you're gonna feel a little bit of a level of comfort there for sure.
Yeah, well, there's and that's just it, and it followed that statement kind of followed this story of like, you know, some it's like a parable or allegory, whatever, you know, a guy's in a bar and he's starting to start shit, and you know that's sort of the first thing is like you can always tell who's the most afraid by who's loudest, right? And so you
Exactly.
know there he's starting shit, and this like old man, you know, it's being told as like you know the old kung fu master or whatever, you know, the guy who's the most in control. He just kind of settles him down, and he's like, and you know, even though everybody in the room knows this old man could fuck his shit up if he wanted to, he's like the pro of whatever, you know, karate it is, and he just stays calm and he talks him down, and you know, and everything goes away because it's like he knew he could fight if it came to it, but he he what's it what's the word I'm looking for?
De-escalated.
De-escalated.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's the word. I
Yeah.
was like deflated. Right. You know, um, and that's you know like, and you can only really do that when you know if violence were to happen, I'd be okay. You
Exactly.
know, right?
Exactly. That's
And
hard to do sometimes
yeah,
at my work because you'll start to notice a trend of anabolic steroid usage coming through
yeah,
on a daily
yeah.
basis. So it's kind of just like,
There's types.
yeah, do your thing, get mad. Yeah. You want to punch that bag, you do it, you know? But yeah.
I mean, I'd rather them punching a bag than a person. You know, but
Yes,
like, yeah,
exactly.
right, yeah,
What they're
yeah.
there for, you know? Yeah.
Fuck. So you know the heart of this whole show is this question of like what is a friend, you know, and you know it all, you know, I've caveated this on the show so many goddamn times. I'm sure listeners are tired of me doing it, but you know you're a new guest, so I'm giving it to you, right? And you know the core for me always sprang from this question of, you know, have I been a good friend, and
Mhm.
you know, reflecting on relationships that have continued, relationships that haven't, you know, what mistakes have I made, what you know what choices have they made, all that stuff. And it really boils down to of like it boils down to what is a friend, you know.
Mhm.
And so I'm curious for you in your experiences, what does it mean to be a friend?
Yeah. And I feel like this definition has certainly changed over the years, right?
Mm,
Like, I feel like it changes based on your needs at the time, kind of.
yes.
You know, when you're 18, your biggest thing is, I kind of want a friend who can get me alcohol. I feel like
Yes.
that's my thinking back then, right?
Yep.
And you progress and you know you're starting to come out and it's like, okay, one of the big things I need for a friend is like acceptance in who I'm becoming and opening up to be, you know. But today it's like uh, friendship holds an immense value, almost as like a sanctuary, you know,
Yeah.
in these times because it's like the world is so dark right now. We need friends to be there to like lift us up. We have
Mm,
to create these safe spaces for each other when there are no other spaces for us.
mhm.
I feel it. We have barely any room these days to be our true, authentic selves
Yeah.
other than with our friends, you know. People can't do that with their families sometimes. You definitely can't do that at work. You cannot be your authentic self. Like,
Yep.
come on. So with your friends, you have to. That's part of being a good friend is making sure people know, you know, if you're gonna if you're gonna be this, you know, you can be whoever you want to be and it's fine.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's beautiful. And I oh my God, that just kind of like really rocked me because like, you know, you talking about the idea of like the safe spaces and how those terms have become sort of misnomers, right? Because it's like safe spaces aren't about being all inclusive. They're
Exactly.
about actually being very exclusive and being
Mhm.
like, no, they're this is a discerning population here, right?
Yeah.
And when you find a space like that, you fucking hold on to it with everything
Oh
you
yeah.
can, you know?
Yes.
Fuck, that's beautiful. Thank you for that. I like that makes me feel like a little misty, just like thinking about like, um yeah, I don't know. Thinking in two directions, the good old ADHD lets me think nine thoughts before I can even open my
Superpower.
mouth.
It's a superpower there. Yes. Yes. I
And
need
so
to know your Marvel name whenever that pops up.
I think it would be gaslightable man, you know. I'm I'm with great power comes great taking on the responsibility of other people's actions. you know?
Hey, I think you got Captain America beat there. You got Captain America beat.
It was a running joke with some old friends that I was like, yeah, hi, I'm James. I'm the most gaslightable person you'll ever meet because I'll just believe you. Like
Yes.
if you tell me something, I will listen and I will believe you because I will just take it face value.
Mhm.
Like because through a lot of my therapy, I recognize that there's subconscious behaviors that end up being inadvertently manipulative,
Mhm.
through conditioning and things like that. But for me, I don't mindfully manipulate people. I don't say one thing knowing I mean something else.
Mhm.
And to find out that people do that, it continually baffles me to this day.
Well,
Like
it's
I
hard,
just
right? Because
yeah,
you want to give people the benefit of the doubt, right? Like you
exactly.
don't want to think everybody is lying all the time, but how can you separate one from another, you know? It's
Exactly.
very hard.
And that's just it. That's exactly the question. And so it's like, and I whiplash because I go from being like I trust everyone to I trust no one, and there's no like middle ground of like, well, just feel it out,
Yes. Yes.
because
That's
like
like
I've
something
stopped.
I'm working on as well, so I
Yeah,
totally understand.
right. And it's that thing. And it obviously comes from like repeated complex trauma, but it's that like it's like relearning how to trust your body,
Mhm.
right? Because it's like and it's all obviously that plays into the whole the cheesy body keeps the score and all that stuff, but it's like there's a truth in there, right? In that like the more you listen to your body, the more you're like, oh yeah, it knows that this is okay and this isn't, and but then your brain gets in the way and is like, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. Yeah, your nervous system's screaming right now, but it's
Every
fine,
time.
it's fine,
Every
right?
time. Every single time. That's probably why I smoke like too much weed on a daily basis. I'm like, okay, not listening here, going to the
Yeah.
fridge.
Man, I miss smoking weed so much. I was a big smoker for years and years in university, and then I quit and I tried going back years later, and
Mhm.
I just get like so like it's beyond paranoia. Like I get terrorized. You know what I mean? Like I just become so like because I become even I think it's because I'm naturally disassociated. you know?
Understandable. Yes.
Right?
I feel like everyone who says like, "Oh, I get paranoid," I notice they always disassociate on their own prior. So I'm like,
Exactly.
this makes sense.
Right?
Half of my friends have quit smoking weed. I'm like, okay, so I know you guys are disassociating in some other way different than I am. But yeah,
Bingo. Right? Exactly. But like I'm so jealous. I want to I keep on thinking I have like a little pack of pre-rolls that I bought like 6 months ago that are just sitting in my drawer that every once in a while I'm like maybe just a little.
it's hard. It's hard. I
Right?
like try to stop. I try to do like the CBD thing, like
Mm.
mix it in there a little bit.
Mhm.
I tell myself when I have like a real serious job, that's when I'm just gonna completely cut down. Or
Sure.
like I've been thinking about going to like auto mechanic school, and I'm like, no weed during that. That has to be like so locked on for me.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but until then, I'm enjoying my THC with a little bit of CBG. If anybody does smoke weed out there, try
Sure.
CBG. It makes you feel good. If I would have had CBG that the day the guy smacked my mirror, I would not have done anything. I would have said, "It's okay, bye bye, see you later, have fun."
So this is something I wanted to ask. Actually, this is a question that popped in the back of my brain. Was that I'd heard all about CBD, and like I have CBD oil. I use it to fall asleep sometimes and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And I've found that you know, um, because back in the day when I was smoking, we didn't know any of this shit. We were just like buying, whatever, a bag of weed from some sketchy dealer, and like it was what it was. Like we had no idea what the levels were. Sometimes there was a name, but I was always like, okay, cool, this is kryptonite, thanks, bud. Right? Like whatever. And
Pink
now there's all
Floyd
these
droppers. Yeah. Woo. Yeah.
literally, right? I was like, we're doing hot knives. I don't give a fuck what the name is, right? you know
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like now with all the breakdowns, so about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now, I tried to get like really CBD heavy stuff with like really light THC, but I ended up having an even worse time then. And I got thinking maybe it has to do with, at the time I was undiagnosed ADHD, and
Mhm.
so maybe the THC was the thing that was sort of like self-medicating and helping because it was stimulating, right? Um, so I've always wondered about going the other direction and just going like super THC heavy and seeing what happens, But
There's like so many different like makeups that people don't know about. Like you
hmm
talk about using CBD for sleep. I personally wouldn't recommend CBD. I'd recommend like CBN.
oh,
CBN will knock you out. Like that's the stuff you kind of want to go to sleep with.
okay.
And percentages for people out there who do think about that, I encourage you to look more at terpenes. The terpene profiles in the weed are gonna what's is what really affects the high, what you're feeling, and how you
Gotcha.
feel it. So
And
yeah,
is that like high terpenes is the higher, or low terpenes is
high
like what's
terpenes is great, but also like limonene and all the different types of terpenes. If
gotcha?
you smoke a strain and you're like, "Ooh, this does this to me," and I like it, look at the terpenes. I don't look
Really?
at sativas or indicas or hybrids. It's always just terpene profiles for me
This
personally.
is fascinating to me. I love this stuff so
Did
much.
I tell you I used to work in a grow op. I rolled joints all day, 8 hours a day. I just roll joints. Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
So,
So
so that was like for like the pre-rolled packs that you would buy like at the store kind of
exactly.
thing. Wow. Do you have to hand roll them, or do you have like a
Have a
machine, or
giant, yeah, a knock box. So what I do is I take cones. I
Mhm.
just line up all these cones. So 100 per time. I'd use a Ninja blender. I'd throw
Okay,
some
yeah.
bud in there, grind it up. I'd put it in the knock box. It'd do its thing. You turn it on. It just kind of tamps it all down for you.
Yeah.
Take the top off. All you gotta do is get that nice twist on the end. Yeah.
Wow.
I was rolling
That's
like 15,000 joints a day. I got so fast. I was like, boop, 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 boop. And then they put me in charge. I gave out so much free weed. I probably shouldn't say that, but I was just like, no measurement.
yeah.
Every time I had someone in the trim room, I'd like drop a tray. I'd be like, oh no, we can't use this. Take it home.
Spillage, right?
You have to be good to people. People
Yeah.
deserve free weed and just free access to anything they need.
I just, that to me speaks to like a deeper culture that I wish was more pervasive, which was like, if I was working McDonald's, I'd be given like 11 McNuggets. Like I understand that middle management is there to like count the fries and all that, but it's like any chance I got, I would always be just like, fuck it. Like why wouldn't you?
Um,
Like
I got fired for giving out free food.
ugh.
And I just put quotations on that because that was the reason that I was given. But then I
Mm.
told them they weren't allowed to fire me because I quit. So, no. The real reason was because I told somebody I would not respect the manager because I
mm.
wouldn't.
Yep,
I
yep.
would not.
Oh, I love a good quit story. I love. Oh, there's nothing better than quitting a job. Ooh, it's
It's
just
just,
so
yeah.
cathartic. I ride like that's what I used to get high on. In that interim between smoking pot and like getting prescription Adderall, I got high on quitting jobs.
It feels good,
Oh, it's so good.
especially with flair, of course.
Right? My favorite one was I was a dishwasher one time, and I had like in the run up to this paycheck, I had worked like it was something crazy. It was like every day for 2 weeks straight, something like that. But they kept on splitting my shifts. So I'd come
No.
in, it was on the other side of town. I'd come in, I'd work for like an hour or two, and then they'd be like, cool, we need you back here at like 9. So it would be like lunch and then a split and then dinner and yada yada.
Of
So I
course.
was I was there like, God knows how many days in a row. And then I show up and I get my paycheck and it was like $300. And I was starting my shift. I open up my paycheck, I read it, I see what it is. I put it back in the envelope. I put it in my pocket. I say hello to everyone, super friendly to everybody. And then I just walk out the front door. And
Love
I
it.
just just didn't clock in for my
Yeah.
shift.
No.
About 20 minutes later, I got a call from my boss being like, "Hey, I know I saw you. Like, where are you?" I just didn't answer it. Just never heard back from them again, you know? And it just,
Fair.
I don't know.
What
There's
is
some,
this myth of you need to put your 2 weeks in? It's
fuck
fake.
that. I was like,
Like
I'm
who
a
makes that?
dishwasher, right? Then it's like, I don't need the reference. Come on, you know? But
Exactly. One of my favorite questions that I actually usually ask people, what is one thing that you learned this month? Like if you what is the one thing that you learned that you would want other people to know?
fuck, that's a good question. Oh my God, I love that. And, so, okay. I'm gonna need to do a little bit of like verbal processing to get to the actual point,
Fair enough.
but because I think like I'm somebody who I had it pointed out to me recently that I was talking about how like in autism and especially when you're discussing autism, they talk about like you have a special interest, right? The stereotype one is like trains, right? Like you can always tell an autistic person because they like trains, right? That kind of thing. And I was like, am I not autistic? Because like I don't know what my special interest is, because I've never been hyperfixated on one singular thing. I do get hyperfixated, but I don't, I've never had a lifelong one thing. And the person pointed out, they're like, no, your special interest is learning. Like that's you
Oh,
like knowing stuff because I'm always learning about new shit,
yeah.
and so that wrinkled my brain. I obviously it tickled my special interest because I learned, but but
Like,
right,
that's
but
a good special interest to have.
I
Like, think
right.
about it. You just expanding your knowledge constantly.
Yeah, and it was really, it was such a beautiful reframing. I felt very validated in that moment, and it, yeah, it felt very empowering. And as I'm saying this, I'm trying to like rock through all the stuff I have learned about recently. I'm a big fan of history, big fan of psychology stuff. I've been reading a ton about psychology recently, especially in the sort of fallout of the breakup and all that. I've been trying to really unpack. I had initially done the thing that I think a lot of people's impulse is, which is I'm going to learn about the other person. I'm going to learn as much as I can about what's going on for them, so I can understand them, so I can be a better partner for them if we ever get back together.
Mhm.
So I learned a fuckload about BPD, and then I realized, oh no, actually, I'm not. I'm not centering myself, and that's what I need to be doing. So because I need to be bettering myself for myself. I
Of
it does
course.
like I don't it doesn't I'm not in connection with this person anymore. They're not in my life, I'm not in theirs. So like what the fuck am I doing here? Right? So what I instead did, I started reading a fuckload about codependency, and I've been doing a lot of shadow work, and I've been doing a lot of like, cuz stuff that I've been learning about is like there's the anxious versus the avoidant attachment dance, which is the anxious attachment leads in and the avoidant leans out, and then the chase ensues, and that keeps both of them activated, right?
Mhm.
It's a familiar dance for both of them, so they stay in that chaos, right? And I'm somebody who I'm a disorganized attachment, but I lean more towards anxious, and so I definitely cling. And the sort of internal narrative I've found of anxious attachment is like, just let me love you. Just let me, right? Like I'm so good. I'm so pure. Why won't you stop being a bad person and let me love you? Right. And through all this shadow work I've been doing is recognizing how fucking like dehumanizing that is, and
Mhm.
how unsafe that is, because it's like, no, you're a caricature, and you're trying to love a caricature,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I think the stuff, like I can't boil it down to a singular factoid so much as like I think I would really encourage anybody who um recognizes that they lean towards anxious attachment. First of all, I'd say learn what your attachment style is,
Mhm.
and it changes. I don't prescribe to like how you attach is how you always attach. I think people
Mhm.
attach differently to different people, and I think
100%.
we have inclinations, but I think it shifts. Um, but like, yeah, learn attachment style and what the differences are those in that. Whoa, I got muddled there. Learn what the difference is between them, and then also like recognize the toxic traits of your attachment style. And
Yes.
so when I look at a anxious attachment, it's the inability to self-regulate, the inability to perceive yourself as a singular being with autonomy
Hmm.
who is participating in these cycles. Like, it's not just, oh, woe is me, I'm just chasing after this monster. It's like I'm participating in that cycle. And as soon as I took that step back, it was like, it's my eyes opened, right? And yeah, yeah. So I've been learning a lot about shadow work, and that has absolutely rocked my world, and I love it so much. And I feel like it, yeah, I just feel much more like in my own body, which is a really
Yes.
beautiful thing that I haven't had. I feel like I haven't had in like a decade, So
Yes.
thank you,
Yes.
man. Yeah.
Love that for you. Yes.
Um, how do you where do you land on the whole like concepts of attachment theory and those kinds of things?
This has been like something I've been thinking about, right? Because me and my partner Hannah have been together for almost 5 years now. We spent a good chunk apart during COVID because we're
Yes.
on, both sides of the border.
Yeah.
Um, and getting adjusted to like living together now and what that looks like, and just us two in a home. And I can
Mm.
definitely say that, like, after listening to you speak right now, I do need to think a little bit more about my attachment style and how I do, because I I feel like I had an attachment problem as a child with my mother, right? Every single day going to school, I would get physically sick and I'd be like, I can't go to school. I
Yes.
cannot leave my mom. And that's another thing that I'm dealing with now, right? It's like I have always lived within 10 minutes of my mom. During COVID, I
Mm.
moved back in with my mom.
Yeah.
So now living up here, not seeing my mom day to day, it's
Yeah.
one of the hardest adjustments I've ever had to deal with in my entire life. I don't
Yeah.
know how people do it. I constantly ask people, "How do you do this?" Um,
Yeah.
I text my mom every night, "Good night, I love you." Like, we still do
Aw.
that, so that's great. But like, yeah, attachment styles is something that I've been looking into. And I've seen a lot about shadow work on TikTok,
Mhm.
and I'm like, I need to get into this because I have so much trauma that I
Yes.
don't talk about. And I'm like, also find a therapist. Like, all these notes, right? It's like it piles up and it adds on, but like,
Yeah.
we're
Well,
getting
you take it one at a time though, right? Like, you don't, the key is to not be like, here's 19 problems. I'm going to change all of them tomorrow. It's like,
yeah,
I'm going to pick one off the pile and I'm going to look at that for a bit. And that's what we're going to work on.
yes,
Like, it's going the core of everything. If I've learned anything from therapy, the core is always just like self-forgiveness and softness. Just stay soft on yourself first and foremost, always, always, always.
very.
I'm on a big kick of like, and it's something Scott, my therapist, who I talk about endlessly on the show, in my newsletter, to anyone who will listen. Scott, my boy. Um,
Shout out
uh,
to Scott.
Shout out, Scott. Like, genuinely, I mean this completely sincerely. Like, I am alive because I met Scott. Like, I there were moments years ago where like, I've been working with him for almost 4 years, and like there's times where I know without a shadow of a doubt, if I wasn't working with him, I wouldn't be here today.
Mhm.
So like it's but
I'm so glad that you have that, because I
yeah,
feel like that's so hard to find, like,
yeah,
for a lot of people. So, like,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And I mean, and before him, I had gone through therapists. I've
Mhm.
been in one form of therapy or another since I was a child. And yeah, to find him was just like revelation. But he always talks about, especially where I'm at right now. He's like, there's nothing you can do as a human that will ever make you unworthy of unconditional love. Um, the problem comes in when we look for that unconditional love outside of ourselves, because we're not giving it to ourselves first, which is what we have to do. I mean, that's the root of fucking, if you don't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love anybody else? Like,
Yes.
that's literally the point. I don't like RuPaul's framing of it, but the spirit of that statement is, you have to love yourself first, and you have to love yourself
Mhm.
fiercely, and you have to realize that there's nothing you can do, there's nothing you've done that will ever make you unworthy of unconditional self-love.
Mhm.
Um and that gets hard when you start parsing out, well, what if I've done this, what if I've done this, it's like, nope, nope, that's what unconditional means.
Mhm.
Because we were raised conditionally, right? We were raised with conditional love. If you do this, I was just talking about it on the last episode of the show. Like if you do this, you'll get this. When you're a kid, right? If you brush your teeth, you get this. If you eat
Yes.
your vegetables, you'll get like that's
It's
not
very
unconditional love.
transactional for sure.
Bingo,
For
right?
sure.
So we've never been truly modeled unconditional love, and that's something I think a ton about is this idea of like we're trying to create the model of new love, of new understanding, of new society and culture. And, we have examples of parts of it,
Mhm.
but we've never truly seen the full picture, and we're,
And this is, I wish people had my mom growing up because I feel like
mm,
I did get that unconditional
oh,
love.
I love
And I
that.
felt that like throughout childhood. Yes, there was a transactional, do this, here you go. Did I have a toy chest full of little toys? If I did my things and got my stars, I get to pick a toy out. Yes, I
Yeah.
did. But at the end of the day, I felt very much so every time with my mother. It's like, you can make your choices. I don't want you to make this choice, but I'll love you through it. My mom always says, you can murder someone. I might not agree with it, but I'll love you and I'll visit you,
Oh,
So I,
yeah.
I I do totally agree with you though that like a lot of people don't get that. I didn't get that
Yeah.
from my father. He
Yeah.
was a stern dude. He was like,
Mm.
if you do this, this is gonna happen and it's not gonna be a good situation type of thing. So it yeah, no, 100%.
Oh, you're stirring up stuff because I had a similar thing with my mom, and the problem was that my mom also has a lot of her own trauma, and so like it was very much a trauma bond, and that
Hmm.
that stirs up something I wanted to talk about earlier was this thought of like the bond. Obviously, a father figure is really important for everyone, and I think a present father figure is invaluable. Um, and at the same time too, like the mother, it's like you felt her nervous system before you even had a nervous system,
Hmm.
you know like you literally were grown out of her nervous system, and so like whatever her system is, that is beyond words, that's beyond expression, that's something that your body knows at its very very core. And
Hmm.
that to me is the source of like Freud's whole Oedipus complex or the Electra stuff, or it's this idea of like it's not as crass as like everybody wants to fuck their mom. It's like no, like our bodies know something nonverbal that find echoes of our mothers in our partners, and something I'm working on is that my mom, bless her, I haven't spoken to her in a very long time, and I don't plan to anytime soon.
Okay,
And
fair.
at the same time too, I hold a very deep love for her because I
Mhm.
recognize that she had a lot of trauma in her life, and
Yeah,
that didn't get processed, and so it spilled out. And now I go looking for people who have that same energy, and
yeah.
so I'm working on stopping that because I'm the one who creates that cycle, you know what I mean, like that's
Because
not
I
their fault.
always, I already knew coming in here, I was probably gonna say today, like, if you don't have trauma, I can't be your friend.
Yeah.
Like, every time it's like that's a reoccurring thing. Like if
Yep.
you have zero trauma, it does worry me a little bit though, right?
Yeah.
It's not
Yes.
like it's not so one sided.
Yep.
Because people who don't have trauma, how do I know they're not gonna judge me for the decisions that I made when I was going through trauma?
That's just
Are
it.
they gonna understand any of that?
Yep.
I
Yep.
don't know.
Yeah. Well, and it's such an interesting like threading the needle. Oh my god, you've sent my brain in so many directions. One being like, is it that you don't have trauma, or is it you're so traumatized you are unable to talk about it? That's where
Mhm.
my brain usually goes because I'm like, nah, you're fucked up. You just can't say it. Um, but the on the in the other direction too is this thing of like it's threading the needle between being um how do I say it? It's like being empathetic and then being enabling,
Mhm.
which I think is a really dangerous tightrope that co-traumatized people sometimes walk, which is like being understanding versus being like I'm going to be so understanding that I just let you perpetuate whatever you're doing, right? And that's something that I struggle with, and something that I've encountered just recently too, without giving details or anything. It's just that it's like it's this thing of like yeah, you can understand why someone is do something, but you're now enabling this
Hmm.
toxicity, and you're now
Hmm.
enabling this, like, what does amount to abuse, you know? So
Yeah.
it's like, you know, yeah. It's like, it's like, for some reason I'm hearing in my mind like one of those like really right wing sayings of like, don't be so open minded, your brain falls out, you know? Right?
Thank you. Thank you. You sound like my uncle.
Right.
I feel at home again. That
Right.
homesickness I had, it's
Welcome.
gone.
Come on in. Welcome. Right. um, that leads me back to one of the other really core questions that we're sort of circling around, is this question of community. Like we're talking about all these threads of what boils down to the concept of community. And
Yeah.
I think where I've been landing with this new season with adding this question in is, a friend is the single individual, and then the community is the sort of the collection of those individuals. But that's where I'm landing right now, and I still don't even really recognize what that truly means. And so I'm really curious, to you, what does community mean?
Yeah, I always like to use like the analogy like community is like that vibrant tapestry you see in a stoner's bedroom, right? Everyone's
Yeah.
kind of bringing their own thing to the party essentially, you know. I want when I build a community, I love diversity. That's the first thing I want. I don't want us all to necessarily be the same. Do I want some of us to have some of the same experiences so it's relatable, of
Yep.
course,
Yep.
but like I want different viewpoints. I want people who grew up in different regions. I want all just a melting pot for a community. Because you see, where I come from, Linden is like a small Dutch town, right? Where I went to high
Mm.
school. So you'll see the community, tall, blonde. That's it. If you're not that, see you later. We're
Yeah.
not talking, you
Yeah.
know? I think it honestly, for me, a community needs to help represent a profound sense of belonging and support, and connection. Because without that, where are we in this world? Like it's lonely without community.
Mhm.
Um, it's so interesting to come from a smaller town community type situation to like a bigger city where the community is kind of different. Back home, I had a great community. I was friends with this group of ladies who all lived in this big house called the Blue Manor. And they were the Blue Manor bitches. And they were just like the greatest. Shout out to all of you guys. Like, those were the people who showed me truly what community was.
Mm.
They rose up time and time again when I needed them, After one of my first like big breakups where I had to like, oh shit, I don't have a place to live now. I'm having to
Yeah.
couch surf. Never once did I feel like I was a bother there. Come in there. When an incident happened when my roommate lost his life in the room across from me, I was like, fuck, who am I going to call? It's 1 a.m. What am I doing right now? I called them. They were there within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Community is that, it's being there for each other. And
Yeah.
it's a space where we find the opportunity to connect and share resources. Um, but also, communities can be toxic and it can be hard to maintain when a
Mhm.
community is, bigger, smaller, it doesn't really matter. Every community has their issues. So we need to make it a space where people feel like they can advocate for themselves.
Mhm.
If you're feeling you're stepped on, people need to be able to feel like they can speak their mind. And
Yeah.
too many times in friend groups, people aren't speaking their minds to each other, and so it's coming around.
Yeah,
Just
for
know
sure.
if I'm in your friend group, I know some shit you probably don't want me to know because everyone's talking, and that's
Yep.
just how it is.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people know some shit about me too, but I'm also like, I would love to hear it because I want to know what gossip goes around.
Well, that's always been the thing for me, is that it's like it circles back to that thing of like being direct in my mind, is that it's like I don't give a shit what is being said about me as long as you're brave enough to say it to me.
Thank you.
you
Yes,
know like
exactly.
and be open to it not being black and white,
Hmm.
because like if you're just taking one story, there's likely truth within that, but it's not the truth.
Of course.
Like there's do you know Gavin Harper?
I do not.
Okay. Well, they're a acquaintance in the community, and they always say that there's three stories. There's, you know person one story, person two story, and the truth,
Mhm. Of course.
right? And I just, yeah, I think coming out of what I'm coming out of is that feeling of like just feeling like shut out. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And on one hand, understanding it because I was the person brought in, and then at the same time too being like, yeah, but I spent a year and a half with you people, and you all said you love me, and you all said we're friends, and you all said, and
Mhm.
then like suddenly it was just like Stonewall, and not the good Stonewall either, like. Yeah, so I'm just, I'm just curious, right? It's like, and that to me is that thing of like, when you talk about advocating, is it like the space to speak up, or is it also, because sometimes I think like, what about people reaching out? I'm, for me personally, I'm somebody who struggles to reach out. My instinct when I'm in pain is to close up and is to isolate, and I know a lot of people are the same. And if I say that and people know that and they still don't reach out, that ends up kind of hurting even more, right?
Yes.
So I'm curious where, yeah, like who's responsible for the community in your sort of perspective?
You have to have a balance, right?
Mm.
Because I feel like some you have to know when to reach out sometimes, and like when you're taking it too far. Because for me personally, like sometimes I don't want people to reach out, and it starts to irk me when people start reaching out a little bit too much. I'm like, hey, I've told you I'm cool, just back off for a little bit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I've been in those situations where I've definitely overstepped, and I'm grateful for like people who were open and honest and said, hey, I've spoken my piece. I don't want to talk about it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I have this friend Martha. Me and Martha, like, we worked together for a long time. She lives in Colorado right now. We have this thing where like we'll text each other or call each other. It's like, whoa, are you okay? It's like Martha sometimes she has like this sixth sense. She's like, something went on. Let me check in real quick. We will go months without talking. Just months, like just drop off. No word, no communication. And then like one day it will be like something crazy happened. Like someone said something stupid and I'm like, bitch, guess what happened? And we will talk. We could talk for 8 hours. Like if we weren't like, oh, I gotta go do this, we could be on the phone forever. Um, so I do think reaching out is important still, You should be checking in.
Yeah,
Check in until you are certain that you shouldn't be checking in.
yeah, yeah. Whew. I love that. I
But
feel like
also reach out. Try to reach out too, you know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
it's a two-way street. You
that's just
do,
it.
even if you are struggling, like, you if you feel like you have to, like, you got to reach out. It's so hard though. It's hard.
Yeah, well, part of the DBT work that I'm doing, which is about like, acting opposite, right? Where it's like, if you have an instinct to do one thing, try the other thing,
Yeah.
try the opposite thing, sin bravely. I always say to my students, right? And it's like, it's like, try, if you're scared of reaching out, why not see what happens? Like, worst that could happen is they say no, which is basically the same as not hearing from them anyway.
Yeah.
So
And honestly, if you don't have the mental capacity, chat GBT that shit. Chat GBT it and send it. You don't have to put that much effort into reaching out for help. It can be that simple.
holy fuck. What a suggestion. I love that. Oh my God.
Because it's hard, right? It's hard to put your thoughts together when you're in a
Yes.
place where it's like, fuck, I am down and I do not know what to do.
Yeah.
ChatGPT is there for you.
Holy fuck. I have never even thought of that. I'm like, I feel like I've just gotten like a surge of adrenaline because I'm just like, oh my God, this is such an incredible usage of that tool. What's so funny too is that like, I'll have conversations with ChatGPT. Like, I'll literally like, sometimes we get like a little anxiously attached because like, I'll be like, thank you so much. And they'll be like, oh, you're welcome. And I'll be like, oh, thank you. You're so polite. And like, I can't sign off because we're like, no, you hang up, This
Wow.
is incredible.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely using that.
Yeah, this is just one simple one that I
Love it.
also ask people. It can be one or the other.
Okay.
Uh, Favorite anime or favorite movie? Or
Oh,
both. You could answer both, either or. I
yeah.
just, options.
Yes. Oh my god. Okay. Okay. Anime, I have a how do I put it? I have a very I don't have as deep experience with it as I want.
Mhm.
Um so growing up, oh my god, I'm such a fucking ADHD storyteller. I'm like, "Oh, you want a simple answer? Buckle up, baby."
I love it. It's a cut scene. It's just a cut
Right,
scene.
right, exactly. Lean back, get comfy. I I so growing up, I was a major reader of Wizard magazine. I don't know if you remember Wizard. It was like a comic collector magazine. You might be too young for it. I don't know,
Maybe, maybe.
but it was like when I was growing up, it was still in the era where like it was really fucking hard to get anime. Like you had to know some weird guy who just had like bootleg tapes in the back
Mhm.
room of his comic shop, and like you really didn't want to go back there, but like you really needed to see what happened in Dragon Ball Z. So you risked it.
Of course.
Um, uh, but because of that, I saw Akira pretty young, and nothing's ever beat it. Like just nothing's ever been able to top it. I still go back. I watch it at least once a year. Um, they did like a re-edit a couple years ago with a new dub, and it just made it just so much better, even though it was already perfect. And so
Mhm.
yeah, I just my default. I know it's like it's sort of basic bitch answer in a way to be like, oh, best anime, Akira.
I
Like
mean, it's
what are you
fair.
like Ghost in the Shell?
No, it's totally fair though. Like a lot of people love Akira, and I can't be a hater.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was like new to anime. One of like my first partners sat me down and had me watch Death Note, and that was like
Oh
my
yeah,
awakening of like this
yeah.
whole new world.
And
Uh,
that one's unreal. That
oh,
one is
so
yeah,
good. It's so
yeah.
good. I hate the movie Netflix made
Oh yeah,
in
no, we don't even
Seattle. I'm
talk
like,
about it.
oh,
No,
oh.
it doesn't exist. What movie? What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
exactly.
Yeah.
I will say I'm enjoying the new Avatar: The Airbender that came out.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I want to check it out. I That was a big one. I this is the other part of anime that's always kept me from getting too deep into it is I get really overwhelmed because I'm a completionist. And
Mhm, of
so if I want to watch a show, I'm going to watch it from the start. And
course.
and because of that, I tried to get into One Piece and I was like, "Oh, there's 9,000 episodes?"
Yeah.
Uh no, sorry. And I wanted to so bad because what I did see, I was like, this is fucking incredible, but I couldn't do it. And same with JoJo's
Oh,
Bizarre Adventure. I
mhm.
loved what I saw, but then I found out how much there is, and I was like, oh fuck this.
I did it with Naruto. I watched all the filler. I sat there and like I just committed myself to it during
Yeah.
COVID. Worth it.
Ooh,
Loved it.
yeah.
So, but yeah.
That's a good use of your time.
Mhm.
I can definitely endorse that. I know that there must be like because I know with Dragon Ball, I can't remember what it's called, but they did one of those cuts that's like just the good. They cut out all the like
Yes.
they
Yeah.
simplified it. There's a name for that cut. I can't remember, but like there must be one for some of these other ones. Hey,
Oh,
like
most definitely.
yeah,
Most definitely.
maybe I'll go. I'll have to go back. In terms of favorite movie, that one changes. I think if I was gonna just like bleh, a thought, I think I have to default to Jurassic Park. Because it was just like it came out at the exact time it needed to for me. I think I was like 6,
Yeah.
and I was dinosaur crazy. I grew up in Calgary, which is just outside of like Drumheller, where there's Royal Tyrrell, where there's tons of dinosaurs. I'm pretty sure they mention like one of the paleontologists who worked at the Tyrrell in the movie, maybe in the book. I can't
Ooh.
remember, but I was dino nuts at the time, and so that movie came out, and it just it's Jurassic Park. It fucking blew my mind, right? And
Yeah,
like,
yeah, you can't go wrong. Well,
yeah,
I mean, Chris Pratt, you can go wrong, but
you can go wrong. It turns out,
yes,
but that first one,
yeah,
it's just and it's like it's immaculate screenplay. Like it's tight, it's good.
the
Everyone,
score is yeah,
oh god, and
yes.
like every single legally aged actor in that movie is gorgeous. Like it's like who wouldn't? Like
Mhm.
from John Hammond down. Like
Had me questioning for sure.
right? Fuck. But How about you? What about yourself? You said Naruto or Naruto, is that the proper one?
You know what? Yeah, Naruto,
Yeah.
Naruto. I hear both. You
Right?
know,
Yeah. I
dialect.
just know the run,
Yeah,
you know? But
exactly.
but is that is what's your fave?
My favorite anime. I think one of my favorite like short animes currently, just like a few episodes, would be called Erased. It's about this student who's like going back in time to try to save someone essentially, and like they
Mm.
keep on just flashing back forward and back, and it's kind of wild. It's a good watch. Like there's only 12 episodes maybe. That one definitely kept me hooked, and my partner Hannah enjoyed it, and she doesn't watch a whole lot of anime.
Damn.
An obscure anime that I always recommend is Shokugeku or Food Wars.
I've heard this title before. Okay.
Please
Yeah,
just
yeah,
look up
yeah.
a clip on YouTube if you have time. Like it is orgasmically foodie is how I, would have to describe that without
Gorgeous.
going into detail.
Gorgeous. I can't remember the name of it, but I watched one through lockdown that I loved. That was about this boy who like was obsessed with Street Fighter 2. And then one day this girl comes into town and just fucking rocks his ass at it.
Love,
And
love it.
the whole show is about like arcade games, and it's like that era of arcade, and he's trying to be good at them, but she's always better at him, and then, anime stuff occurs,
Of course, of
um
course.
I wish I could remember the name of it. Fuck. It had a killer theme song.
You'll have to send it to me later.
Yes, I'll find it. I'll find it. Yeah.
Yes.
Um holy fuck, Jabree. This has been just like so magic. It's been so nice chatting with you. I genuinely like don't like having to wrap this up. I want to just keep talking with you all evening.
I
And
know I could just go on and on.
you know, like I already mentioned in the episode, like we're gonna have you back on. Like you're just
Would
gonna
love
have to do a part two.
would
We'll
love
do an even deeper dive. I'll send you some shadow work resources. We'll get working on
Great.
that. We'll
Yes.
talk. Right,
Yes.
right,
We
right,
check in. We gotta do a check in.
right. Yes, we'll go deeper on the mom stuff. We'll go for it.
Mom will love it. Hi, mom.
Right. Hi. um, but before we wrap up, I just have this one question. But before I say that, though, I do want to just like I want to take a second, and I just want to say, like, just thank you so much.
Oh,
I feel really, I feel really lucky to have met you, and I feel. You're someone who I know we've only seen each other in person a couple times, but every single time it's always been just with so much warmth and so much like you bring a really um I'm struggling to find the word. You find like you bring a really beautiful energy with you wherever you go, and I've always just felt very safe and very seen by you, and I've always really valued that. And so I just want to say thank you for being who you are, and thank you for chatting with me.
appreciate that. I appreciate that. I think like one of the biggest gifts we could give people is like that warm experience. I feel like I grew up in a Christian home, right? And they talk about
Mm,
that Christian love.
mm-hmm.
Uh,
Nothing more
ew,
hateful than a
ew,
Christian love.
oh, I know. But like in that upbringing, even like with my grandpa who was a pastor, like he was a good example of like this is what love is, and this is what we should be giving to everybody, not just your friends, but people, you're meeting on the street, just random people. We got to show them that because if we're not, we're losing our humanity at that point.
Yeah. Well, it's
So,
grace, right? It's
yeah,
grace,
exactly.
it's the genuine grace, and I
And
think
also,
you
like,
embody it.
exactly. And you were also very easy to talk to. One of my like favorite persons when I first met. I think you had a Dr. Pepper vape, and it blew my
Yes.
fucking mind. I have been chasing that high for like ever for
Yep.
like a year. I'm like, ooh,
Yep.
need
Yep.
it. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. That's what we bought it over. I was just thinking about that the other day. I was like, I had actually I'd picked up some Dr. Pepper juice for my refillable one, but it's not quite the same. It's just a teeny bit off. So
Mhm.
it's just like I was like, ugh, it's just not the same,
I'm 5 months vape free.
But congratulations.
Thank
Holy fuck.
you. No, it's
I
fine. It's
I'm
fine.
I'm 5 months everything but vape free. You know,
We're doing great. Look at us.
right? We just need to Voltron together, and we'll be one sober person. You know, right? um, to wrap up, one last question. I always love leaving listeners on kind of an actionable thing they could try out this week. And so, what do you think is one thing listeners could do to try and be a better friend, either to themselves or to their community?
Hmm. I say, that's a good question. That is a very good question. I think maybe, yeah, yeah. I think one way that people could start becoming better friends is educating themselves on issues that affect marginalized people. A lot of times we have friends who, say one thing, but they're not taking the action. And you can see it, you can tell with a lot of people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I mean, I don't always call people out for it, but it is something that I note and observe.
Yeah.
So like follow through with your words for your friends' sake, and it's a tough place out here for a lot of marginalized groups, and it's not a time to be failing them.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
That's a really it's a really gracious way of framing that. you know,
Kill them with kindness, as my
right?
grandma would always say. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Oh, I love it. Jabree, thank you so much one more time. Like
Thank
you're
you.
magic. Is
Yes.
there anywhere you'd like listeners to find you? Do you wanna plug anything? Anything coming up? Anything like that?
Yeah, you could follow me on IG. I'm private, but I post a lot of juicy content. uh, at Young Gumbo, my rapper name. So I'd like to start doing some stand up comedy soon here. So maybe look out for that.
Fuck yeah. Do it. Oh
Hey,
my god, amazing.
but also shout out because I came on here and talked about friendship, but I can't do that without leaving talking about my best friend in the entire world. Shout out to Maggie. You've been there for me when no one else has. You've been there for me in ways that no one else has. You've called me on my bullshit, and you've made sure that I've stayed true to who I am. And so I wouldn't be here without you. And also, fuck you for moving to Walla Walla. That's all I have to say. So if you can make sure that gets in there,
Oh, of course it will. This is the very first time. I've been doing this podcast almost 6 years, and this is the first time anyone has ever taken the opportunity to directly shout out a friend. And I
you
think that that
do.
is gorgeous. I'm so like, yeah, why aren't people doing this more? Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, no, I'd be remiss. I would, if we got off here, I would have called you back and I would have been like, hey, one last thing, just
Turn that
one more
recording.
thing.
Yeah, yeah. Pull a real Columbo on me here, Yeah. All right, let's wrap this up here. Thank you, thank you, thank
Yes.
you. Oh,
Yes.
oh, magic, magic. And that's it. Thanks one more time to Jabree for coming on the show. They are just an absolute treasure, and I genuinely consider myself deeply lucky to have met them. If you want more Friendless goodies, here are a couple suggestions for you to check out next. The weekly Friendless Substack is chugging along and is actually just about to get a slight expansion. You can sign up right now for free to get a weekly update straight to your inbox filled with 5 things to check out, ranging from books to movies to news articles or weird stories that I've gotten hyperfixated on. There's also a Friendless tip of the week to try and be a better friend to yourself and your community, along with a monthly curated playlist and a new poem that week that I have found inspiring. Then, if you're feeling really frisky and maybe have a couple bucks rattling around in your pocket you'd like to send my way, you can sign up for the paid tier, where I'm starting to be sharing at least one new essay every month. I'll be doing these deep dives into thoughts that have just been gnawing at me. They're going to range from anything from personal anecdotes like what I've learned since hitting recently 5 months sober, hot takes on cultural topics, lived experiences, or just harebrained headcanon. Like this one piece I'm currently drafting that posits that the Mushroom Kingdom from the Mario games is actually just the interior hallucinations of the Last of Us outbreak victims. Super fun stuff, I swear. Give it a gander. I promise you won't regret it. All the information, as well as all kinds of other ways to support the show, are included in the show notes, so please do check it out. But that's it for me for another week, so I'm going to wrap this up here. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to catch you back here for another brand new episode. But hey, I'm not going to worry about that just yet, and neither should you, because that is then, and this is now. So for now, all I'll say is I love you, and I wish you well. Fun and safety, sweeties.